my favorite products from Accent Decor is the Woodlot divider. And this is just like a fencing that's been attached together with wire. And it has all these little logs put together. And I love that. It's so versatile to do so many different things with it. So today I want to kind of create, oh gosh, it kind of falls in many different design style categories. It's kind of an abstract, and I think that's kind of where I'm going with it, but it could be, you know, when it doesn't fall into a category, it becomes a floral object or a flob. But this has a little bit of a shelter effect to it because you're going to kind of create a roof to it. It's also kind of a free form because we're just kind of making, because freeform is non-realistic and this is non-realistic, but abstract is also non-realistic, and we see that it's either made with man-made materials or it's natural materials, and what it does is it evokes emotion. So however you want to portray your art in flower design is what you want to do with an abstract design. It's non-conventional, so it's not typically what we see with floral design, but what we really look at with an abstract is texture. We look at texture, we look at the form that it has, the color, and the negative space that we're going to apply to that. So that's what I want to work with today. So I'm going to take this Woodlot divider and I want to just fold it in half. So folding it in half, as you can see, makes it quite a bit smaller. And then I want to just take bind wire and just attach it together in a couple different places. And what that's going to do is it's going to leave me a couple spaces in the middle of this. And with those spaces, I want to add water tubes too. So I'm going to take a water tube and I want to not just have that clear, I want texture. So I'm going to take and just add some U-glue to the water tube. And I've got some yarn. And you can use any yarn that you want, any color palette that you want to go. So I want to kind of go with the autumn colors with this. And I just want to add yarn. And this is a textural yarn. It gives me different varieties of materials, whether it's fabric, and then it also goes into yarn materials and textures. So you'll see that in just a second when I add it all to it. But I just want to wrap this around and go all the way to the bottom. And just keep it so that it basically is covering the glass so I don't see that. But it also is adding texture. And that's what we want. We want to add a lot of that surface quality that gives you the idea that you don't have to touch it to know what it looks like or what it feels like. So I'm just going to add 2 more pieces of U-glue down to the very bottom. And U-glue is amazing when it comes to adding to materials, so I love using that. Come down to the bottom. We're just going to cut this, and so that it adds into our material. So I've got a piece of water tube, this glass water tube, that we've just completely covered with yarn. So I went ahead and just kind of built this structure so you can kind of see, and I think you can understand it as I show it to you. So we've taken that Woodlot divider and then put the water tubes. As you can see, the water tubes are just tucked right into that. I also added to these water tubes just some feathers. So I just used some feathers and just hot glued those right to the yarn that's on the water tubes. So it gives me then that texture, and it kind of adds that dimension of fall to it too. So I think it's just really kind of fun. So you can see all those water tubes are tucked right into that, and they're not going anywhere. So they're tucked right in nice and tight with that wood. And then I've added some branches to this. And this is fresh kiwi. I like working with fresh branches just because I'm able then to manipulate them the way that I want them to go. But I wanted to create this, if we call it a shelter, this feeling over the top. So what that does is it creates that roof level to it. But it's not really a true shelter, and there again we come back to that abstract. So adding this to that, I've kind of bound it here and there and manipulated it so that it's tucked right in, and it's all tucked right into this. So the water tubes can be glued into the wood because you put glue to textures. So if you have textural yarn on the glass, it's going to glue right to the wood. So that gives it that texture. And then adding the fresh branches to this goes right down into that Woodlot divider, and then it gives you this ability then to create this structure. So I want to just continue adding to this. So with our structure, I just want to add some tender vines. So we're going to go with some tender vines in this. And in the water tubes, I've added water to it. And I'd like using, this is just a test tube filler. You can get these at medical supply stores, go online, look at them. These are great for test tubes and water tubes, so that's a great way to fill them and continue filling them. And I just want to add then some tender vines to this and just kind of lay them into the branch structure that we've created just to develop and kind of make this more of a solid structure. So you can see just by adding a little bit of vine to that, it really kind of makes that more solid. So it gives you that, it stops your eye, so it gives you that stopping point. So it's really kind of a nice way to just add some detail and some textures to this, but also just to kind of fill that in so it becomes a little bit more, not quite as transparent as you want it to be. I'm just adding some English ivy to this. Also just kind of tucking that in so you can see. And I wanted to show just the fresh kiwi, just be able to manipulate that and just to have something that's soft and pliable. That's what's really fun. And you can just continue to add that in wherever you need it to be and weave it in and out all the way through. If you want to use dry materials, you can, absolutely. Just look at that line movement that you want to create so that it all kind of goes that same direction as you're following through. So then I want to add, to make this more fall, I want to add some disc buds. So I've got some mums here, and I want to come to the front here, and I want to create, let me see if I got my right height here. I think I want to go just a tad bit shorter. So I want them all about the same height. So let me cut them all to that length, and then we can add them in. So adding our mums, because I want to keep that sight line to be the same. I want it all across that same level. I don't want anything to be disparate in different dimension. I want it all at that same level. So we're going to come through and just add into our water tubes. When we're using water tubes, what we want to keep in mind is that this is a temporary design because water tubes can't hold enough water in order for our beautiful little flowers to live for a very long time. Some flowers absorb water faster than others. Mums drink quite a bit, roses drink a lot. So keep that in mind when you're making a temporary design like this. So what's going to drink water the fastest or what's not, and what's going to maintain itself. So keeping that in mind for these temporary designs is very vital. We're going to add you down in here. Making sure that we have enough space. And I like putting individual flower stems in each individual water tube so that they can get enough water. If you put multiples in a water tube, what happens there is that then it takes, up a lot more water. And so you want to be able just to give them as much possibility of survival as you possibly can. So coming to the front, adding one more to this, making sure we don't have any leaves in the water, and that our sight line comes straight across. I also have some Xanadu that I want to tuck in here just to kind of follow through with the line movement that we have, and just pull that down. It gives me a little bit more of a solid view so that I'm able then to see this sight line that comes across with the mums and the foliage, and also gives me some diversity with texture. So we have the texture from the wood, the texture from the feathers, the texture from the yarns. You can even see a little bit of that shimmer of glass that comes all the way across the top, but also just the texture then of the foliages and the mums that we add to this just gives us just this plethora of visual appeal that we have when we look at all of this. So again, looking at kind of an abstract design with the shelter influence that gives us this beautiful transition of fresh materials and branches that come across the top. and then but evoking such emotion with this, it gives us really just that kind of fun thing. So it's textural, it creates this beautiful rectangular form, it has a beautiful color impact. Our focal impact is above and not below, and we have lots of negative space that adds to that, that just gives us more dimension. So with that depth and that implication, it's just really kind of fun. So again, with abstract design, have a great fall.